Lucy's got a follow-up, but Lucy, I'll ask you to clarify that, and Peter can perhaps answer online, because we should move along to our next speaker, who is Jiangyu Li, and will give us a more regional scale talk, to be followed by Fatima. Okay.
Yeah. Can everybody see the slide?
Yes, that looks good.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So today I'll be presenting my PhD work. Part of my PhD work is using the argon thermochronology to understand the crustal evolution, orogenic evolution, and how it can answer some of our understanding about the supercontinent Nuna, and how was the supercontinent Nuna assembly recorded in the Northeast Australia. Before we go to more detail, let's just introduce a bit of the bulk picture about the supercontinent Nuna reconstructions that scientists have been putting the supercontinent assembly called Nuna supercontinent at 1.8 to 1.6 GA based on different method. Our information is like synchronous orogenic events or sedimentary sources or polymeric poles. And in most of the lunar reconstruction, Australia usually have been put very close or adjacent to the Laurentia, which is North American. And but you see the different constructions putting them with the different timing or like different position and as well. So when we start this kind of project, we kind of want to understand exactly when this kind of like company, the ocean between these two big companies closed, and then when those finally assembly of the supercontinent. And also we want to understand the process as well, because there's a different stage people putting on the accretion events, and we want to understand how exactly when the terrain was being created. So so the people from our group, like the Earth Dynamics group in the Curtin University, we kind of like people are working in different angles. And then this work was from the Ida and Georgetown, who are sedimentologists, who go to the Georgetown inlier and then investigate the sediment sources difference. He degraded the sediment sources difference compared to what the sedimentary record have been preserved in the Australia. So the Georgetown, when the sedimentary was deposited at 1.7 to 1.65, the sedimentary is more picking Laurentia magmatism age, but the sedimentary deposit afterwards was transit to a more juvenile, and then start to picking Australia signature. So at the time he was presenting the Georgetown was part of Laurentia, but rifted from Laurentia and then created to Australia during this kind of transition timing. So this is kind of like a first initiative of identifying the localized terrains in this region. And then the following work by Amari Poto, just using the more pseudo-section modeling phases to identify if there's terrestrial accretion, what kind of metamorphism condition have, and then what the collisions signature. So he using the metamorphism study to recognize a synchronous prograde metamorphism occurred both in the Mount Isa and Georgetown inlier. You can see the PD path was occurred like collisional type PD path, and then but the Georgetown inlier, which is the green color, more representing higher pressure than the Mount Isa. So we're putting the Georgetown inlier in the more lower plate. And then, so this kind of like answer a lot of the terrains accretion to the North Australia, Northeast Australia. But what I interest is more looking at the post-orogenic history and trying to use the orogenic post-orogenic evolution to understand if there's this model are kind of like make sense, or this takes to make the picture more complete. So what the argon thermochronology do is like it tell you when does the rock, the mirror in the rock cooling to a certain temperature, like 500 degree or 400 to 300 degrees. And this gives you kind of like a feeling of the rock maybe was cooled due to the thermal diffusion or sometimes due to the uplifting or exhumation. So it kind of like can give you some information about how the rock was exhumed from the 20 kilometer depth to near surface few kilometer depth. And then this is also a study that was in Himalaya. You can see there's a different structure. The structure was bonded different zones where there's thrust front zones with more ring perturbation, recording more larger exhumation stories. So exhumation give you information, can also give you information to tell the different tectonic domains as well. So it's quite useful in this investigation. And then another apply for this method is also it can be fulfill your PD path and then testing the what after the collision, what to complete what the metamorphism of the pressure or temperature can change, just like to make the story more complete. And so what we do is we go to the Mount Ida and Georgetown in Lyre. You probably know the region pretty well. I will just simplify the regional geology. The Mount Ida recorded the 1.19 to 1.5 G sedimentary rock metamorphism and then intrusions. Well, the Georgetown terrain is slightly younger, and then the Georgetown don't have the basement rock have been exposed. So just record the 1.71 to 1.55 G. They are intruded by 1.74 intrusion, 1.6 J 68 intrusions, but dominated intrusion was just 1.55 J, the post-orogenic intrusions. And we go there, we're targeting at the more high-grade metamorphism area where the area have been subjected to this regional orogeny, which is 1.6 orogeny. As mentioned, the metamorphism are ascribed this orogeny as the continental collision associated orogeny. So what we use is we use hornblende, muscovite, and biotite, which is shown in the green, blue, and gray color. So you see this dots in there is all the sample we collected, and also we dated the space mirror from different regions. But you see the idea is that we're trying to get a mirror pair from different regions and cross it to see if there is any uplifting in between across the fault zones, structures, or what kind of the cooling rates they can tell us, and to see if there's a different tectonic regime. And then the same idea was also applied to the Georgetown. And this is the metamorphism grid map I kind of like modified from the metamorphism physics to the temperature based on the published work from Foster, Rubinach, and Valenti's work. Basically, Mount Isa is more complex because you are varying from green schist metamorphism to amphibolites phases to lower amphibolites phases. But the Georgetown is more like a simpler. You have the more green schist phases on the western side, and then more like amphibolites and granular phases in the eastern side. So but here we also need to aware that the metamorphism are not all been ascribed or related to the Isa orogeny. They can also be linked with the 1.55 granite intrusion. So we kind of like need to understand if they work at cooling, are they cooling from the orogeny events, or are they just cooling from the heating of the granites? So this is something we have to aware when I conduct this work. And then another give you a brief idea of what we have collected is this is a column, structural column for Mount Isa and for Georgetown. The time is from 1.9 to 1.55. So you have different belt, western, central, eastern. Georgetown also have different belt, and then but they are subject to the Isa orogeny, and then being intruded by 1.55 to 1.50 granites. So we collected the rock from the basement rock, from the granites, Sibilla granites. They're their country rock, and also cross the Pilgrim Fault or Concari Fault. So trying to see what kind of information we can tell, if they can tell different tectonic domains, and we're trying to collect as homogeneous rock as possible, because when we apply the archon dating, there is an issue, because if you are not homogeneous, you reopen your system, you are infected by the fluid, then your age is meaningless in terms of tectonic interpretations. So so kind of like we have to really carefully choosing the samples, and then interpreting the samples, see if the sample area we choose have been affected by the thermal disturbance, or it just like went through the other hydrothermal mirror breakdown. This kind of information just need to be aware. So I was just like showing a synthesis result after all the data. So as I mentioned before, that we have divided the Mount Isa into Western, Central, Eastern, and then Georgetown, Western, Central, Eastern, also including the Croydon area as well. So you see a big difference from different regions, but also some similarity as well. So the horizontal layer is the temperature difference, right? So you can see the temperature, you can trace the temperature from the metamorphism phases or the granite temperature, crystallization temperature, to more argon cooling temperature. So most of this area is more like argon data, and some of this is from like metamorphism temperature. And then this is the time range, and then so temperature range, and this is the time range. If you have the same temperature range, that you have the larger time range, means you are cooling more slower. So this very deep slope, the red line represent more slowest cooling, and then this one represent the faster cooling. And it kind of like makes sense, and also kind of like give you a separate cooling events in different regions. For example, if we just looking at the more faster cooling record, that was from the Croydon, that was collected from the granites, and what we're seeing is just the granite intruding to a very near surface level and cool down slowly, very fastly actually, to during the later thermal diffusion stage. And what we're seeing for the slowly cooling here is the Western Mount Isa. It seems that West Mount Isa is pretty much like the Sibylla, that area is pretty much like stable, and then didn't cool as other bit of like kind of like being isolated a bit, and wasn't cooling so fast. And then, but we also see some similarities. So in Mount Isa, in the central belt, eastern belt, until the western belt, they all kind of like cooling very similar, following the similar path after the Isa origin. So this yellow path is just represents this two block, and it also makes sense because they are kind of like very continuously. And then, but between the Western Georgetown and the Eastern Georgetown, there's a detachment fault, and then there's also very strong metamorphism grade changing from grain-shaped phases to amphibolite phases. So you see the slope become shallower, which means faster cooling, and then slightly earlier, which is also makes sense because the central belt is recording higher pressure amphibolite phases, and then the higher pressure, so it's kind of like this is more like represent the detachment fault activation, which could assume the cross more earlier and faster a bit. And then we also see a separate cooling events, which is recorded in the eastern of Georgetown, which is in the Inus region. Like when all the cross have been cooling down from Isa origin, this cross haven't been cooled down until 500 1.55 GA. So this kind of photograph gives you information of how different cooling represents for, and how similarity the different tectonic domains, but also give you an idea of what the dominant cooling it is. Mainly is post the 1.55 when there's the regional granite intrusions, cross melting, and all the cross have been slowly been assumed. And does this means the cooling is really strong associated with the granite intrusion? Not necessary, because for those areas like in the central belt of the Mount Isa, there's no 1.55 granite intrusion, and the granite is pretty far from the central belt. It's also cooling exactly at the same time, and in the western belt of the central as well. So some bits are related to the ground cooling, but most of them are not. And then we're trying to interpret this into a consistent model by presenting a crustal delimitation model of when the crustal been cleared and subducted, the lower bit of crust kind of like been thickened and been deliminated. That's why you have more like heat coming from the upwelling asthenosphere and melting the crust to generate ice granites in the Georgetown inlier and A-type granites, which is usually hot granite that temperature can reach to about 800 degrees in the eastern side. And then the structural break between the central and eastern of Georgetown inlier are just like they are just like very, very separate. They wasn't assumed synchronously. And this work have been also got a lot of feedback and suggestions from the Richard Pickings and then the David Gills. So they gave me very good comments and feedback during my thesis review. So I was acknowledge them in the end of my presentation. So this is all the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jiangyu.
Thank you.
That's excellent. I think I've seen one previous presentation you've given, but that's a really nice summary and a great integration with some of the other recent studies. Based on the timing of the cooling, are there implications for mineralization during that granite event in the eastern fold belt area?
Yep. So yeah, so you're asking about the cooling in the eastern belt, right?
Which is, as I understand, in the eastern fold belt, it's similar timing to emplacement of the granites. That
right,
the uplift is happening at the same time. Are there have you considered implications relative to mineralization?
Actually, our group, we didn't go too much on how this how implication it to the mineralization but they do have some implication to see the activation of the faulting, I think. So if you are looking at the fault activation, probably we are looking at around 1.53 GA-ish when the fault start to activate a bit. And then there's also kind of like I think Richard Picking also have some dating some very precise like fluid occurrence events at that time as well. Yeah.
Excellent, thanks. So if anybody has any other questions, I don't see anything in the Q&A at the moment, but if you have any other questions, will you be able to stay around, Jiangyu?
No, actually, I probably need to go after because I have some work need to done today. I really apologize, but yeah,
no worries.
The company is more like very straightforward. There's some tasks I need to finish today. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries, that's fine. I'll probably follow up. I wouldn't mind a more in-depth discussion with you, so I might follow up later and sort of the time we can have a chat.
Yeah, but I can answer the questions.
Oh, sorry?
There is a question in the Q&A.
Oh, thanks very much. From Derek Hoy, he says, great talk. Any idea on the stress field during collapse? Is there evidence for wrench or transpression during the late Eisen phases? Have you considered the collapse in this context?
Yeah, actually, the good question actually, and I did consider some of the thing he mentioned, like the wrenching time and transpression timing. So the first one is stress field during the collapse. I think dominated with the eastern-western extension stress field, and this was well recorded in the Georgetown area when the detachment fault. I think the Silvio Valenti is 2020's work in the tectonics. He kind of like documented different structures, and then just like showing how the granites would been shared during the east-west extension. So it's kind of like well recorded in the Georgetown region, but I believe it's dominated just east-west extension. And then the wrenching and compression, another good question as well, and I don't think there's any clear answer in that area yet, because there is a transversion being proposed during the 1.74, 1.73. Like there's Bayesian inversion events. People are putting like east-west compression and a bit of transversion, but you also see the transversion faulting is cutting across kind of like some of them are like younger structures, and you are thinking that they must before like probably post originating like crustal activation, like faulting activation. So there's not really high precision timing on this transpression events yet. But I think Peter Betts also discussed about the transpression on the Pilgrim fault. I think they are more saying this transpression fault is like old. The large transversion is all the events around 1. I think it was 1.8 to 1.7, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Peter Betts, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, thanks very much.